Hi everyone, welcome back to Morning Mug. Today I want to talk about how to be less reactive, part 1. And today I'm going to cover general reactions that we feel that are negative, whether it's through real life situations and events, media, entertainment, and of course people, conversations and those types of things. So the first part of this video in all segments is, why do we react? Well, the simple answer is that we are human and we have an emotional spectrum of emotions. So we're gonna have tied experiences to just being alive, like it seems so simple when I say it like that, but that's just what it is to live. Like, you're gonna feel things and it's gonna be associated with certain things. And a lot of times, if you are a rational person, there's gonna be reason to feel the way you feel about things with a great understanding by most people. So all that to say, when I focus on negative emotions, things that trigger people, such as the news, things such as people protesting, people rioting, people hearing awful things that are happening every day or almost every day, that affects our well-being, that affects our mental well-being, that affects our emotional well-being. And just being someone who has been easily able to switch emotions pretty quickly from hearing bad news, even if it's not like on the TV, or even if it's like between other people or family, it's always difficult, and that's normal. That's gonna be a normal thing for mostly everybody, no matter how thick your skin is, things will still be felt, even if it feels like a pinch, like a fly on your arm. People are still able to feel things. So it's not to say that you need to be robotic. It's not to say that you should ignore what you feel all the time, but it's to not allow your emotions that are negatively felt to completely destroy you. That's the whole idea behind this message. And why I choose to talk about it is because I think a lot of people are just going to go through difficult emotions, and a lot of people are going to want to feel like they want to control some of the bad things they go through, how to not take everything so personal, and know when things are personal and when people are actively trying to upset you, to deliberately put you down and oppress you and those sorts of things. Like, yeah, like, I do agree you shouldn't take every single thing personally when things aren't meant to be taken personal, if it's like little things. And it's not to say that little things don't matter, but it shouldn't matter too much to the point where you can't function throughout the day because you're so overthrown with emotions that it's like you're just gonna snap, and that's not good. That's not a healthy way to live. So why I say little things matter even if it shouldn't matter too much? Because if you try to do anything feeling stressed out, chances are you're going to feel more stressed out. Chances are you're going to be feeling more stressed if you try to fix or handle any situation with a strong feeling of stress already. And it's a normal feeling that I understand all too well. Sometimes you try to do things and it just feels like the universe is just against you, because here comes along the next person trying to help you and they do it like it's nothing, and it almost makes you feel like you're being targeted somehow, and it's like not like that at all. Sometimes things are a certain way because it is. And just because some people are able to solve problems doesn't mean that they don't live through problems. Doesn't mean that they don't have their hard days. They all Everyone does. That's the hmm that's something to be a little relieved about, because people, no matter how good they're able to fix problems, they're still gonna feel things. And um that's the thing about life. Like, I think a lot of times we take things a little too personal sometimes, and that we were trying to, um, be this sort of person who is able to do things on her own. Sometimes be very resilient and to be very self-reliant, and try to run before we can walk, and that shows up a lot even later on in life. You know, um, and that's the thing. Like, without like a solid foundation, you can't have a strong building, a strong house. So, sometimes we just have to look at what's really affecting us and say, why is this affecting me so much? If it's not something that's actually like actively trying to sabotage your life, you shouldn't be walking around like it's a doomsday every day. And I can understand, since the pandemic, that a lot of people feel like it's been like the end times, like the apocalyptic times. And sure, I mean, there's good reason to feel certain feelings like that sometimes, but not every day. Not every day. You know, I don't believe that you can have a year full of all bad days. Even in one day that's bad, there's a few good things that did happen. Even if you don't count it as a good day, but there are always something happening that can be seen as good. And maybe it won't happen every day. I mean, some people are just going to be really unfortunate in their own circumstances, but this is really for people who, maybe you do have it good, but maybe you're just, a little overreactive, or you feel a little underreactive. Maybe you want to be more expressive. You don't want to overdo it, but you want to do it in a way where it's healthy. So, in a way, you just gotta allow yourself to feel sometimes, and you just gotta realize that it's normal. All right, even feeling negative emotions is normal, but sometimes there's gonna have to be a time and place. So, if you're at work, you don't want to be feeling negative for the most part. You don't want anybody seeing you feel that way, because most places want to present a professional image, and that usually comes with a warm and friendly nature that is inviting and welcoming, especially if it's anything related with business or corporation. No matter if it's entry or a very high gross paying position, you know it's always important to know what customer service is, how to be a person who's inviting and welcoming and able to speak to other people, and the importance of body language and how that affects another person's psyche, and how much are they likely to want to approach you. That's all very important things, because even if it is just business, right? Like that still greatly impacts economy and growth, and just getting paid and all that sort of stuff. Employment and keeping employment, and sometimes employment's not going to be fair. We've seen this during the pandemic, even now in 2025. Um, but what I'm really trying to get at with this video is that there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be happening, and it may not always be fair, it may not always be nice. And the way to be less reactive is to realize how we show up for ourselves in our own lives, things we can do, even as a healthy distraction, right? People may think playing video games can be bad. Sure, if you play too much and you don't set a boundary, yeah, it can be really bad. But it could also be really good to, like, have a little fun, let your mind wander in a different world. Same thing with watching movies, or a fun TV show, or a sitcom, or a rom-com, like things that have joy and laughter. Like, that can really be a very simple thing that you can give yourself. And you don't have to have a hard day, a bad day. It's just realizing that there are ways to diffuse the negativity, and it's different when it's like a very specific thing, like being more confident in yourself and all that sort of stuff, which I'm going to cover in future videos. But in this video, it's really baseline general topics, stuff you see on your phone, the TV, talking to people. And there's going to be a lot of negativity that's going to be said at some point or the other. And the important thing is you got to be able to validate whether any of it is actually true, not just made up, and knowing what value does that information have over you. Like, how important is it truly? Because if it's something that, again, it's not directly trying to take a stab at you, it's not good to allow things to take a stab at you, if you get my meaning. If it's something like feedback from a person, feedback is never going to be easy. But especially if it's things that you feel like you have to change about yourself to be a little better, it can always feel personal. But the less you see it that way, things do get a little easier. It does take time, though. But I mean, if it's like harsh criticisms, insults, and stuff like that, it's also important to realize what was done on your part in order for that to have happened. Because as much as people want to victimize themselves for going through a very hard time, they also got to see what they were doing as well for that sort of consequence to happen. So don't just play a blame game. Also take accountability for certain actions if things didn't go the way you wanted it to. I know that you can always do things differently in order to get different results. So it's not end of the world if you try to impress someone that really mattered how they saw you and how they thought of you. Thankfully enough, there can be a next time with another person, just as long as we try to do the right things and think the right way, by knowing that, I'm going to learn from what I didn't understand, from what went wrong, and try to do better next time so things can be better. And always feed yourself positivity. Allow yourself to feel the the things that don't feel great, but do it on your own time. Never do it around people that you're trying to, like actually either impress or leave a good impression, at least to the extent that, like, if you didn't do things right, don't make it worse. And that's all there is to it. And with media, you know, that's gonna always trigger people. All right, you gotta understand that the news is out there to trigger you. And if you're on social media, you know, the best thing to do is mute certain accounts, to not feed into the algorithm, just either block certain accounts, mute them, and if there's an option to say that you're not interested in a certain post, that's gonna fix whatever you see on social media in order to have a better feed, so that you're not just like doom scrolling, feeling like you're just seeing things that are actively feeding into your neuroticism, which makes you feel like a person pumped with negativity from every single direction. So if you don't want to be that kind of person, just always realize that you have the power to curate what you see, what you hear, and also knowing how you can handle what you hear and see or feel through any of your other senses, and make the changes that are in your power. Because when you have power to make changes, that is powerful, and that's a win. And when you see things as like wins, you're gonna feel so much better about the things you actually do, without always feeling like you need to constantly reward yourself with something like physical, like, things that require either money or, like having to do a certain activity. Like, sometimes the best thing you can do to be more optimistic is allow yourself to feel good about the things you do, big or small. And that is like something that it doesn't take money to do. It just takes a different perspective of looking at what you're going through, and not just seeing everything as a direct attack towards you. Sometimes it's gonna take a lot more creative thinking to get out of a negative loop, things that always make you circle around into a tornado, instead of actually being able to feel free and do things that you want without carrying this weight over you. It's just about knowing that you are able to express what you feel. You are human, and it's okay to feel things, but it's also realizing the situation at hand. Is this a professional environment like work? Is this someone that you want to date? Is this a friend? Is this a family member? And just knowing like how to behave and act in certain places, certain locations, and how you truly want to carry yourself to get to certain places in life. And that will require change. That's going to be the hardest part for some people, but it's worthwhile change, because you are able to do the things you want to do. It's just realizing that if you feel too overly attached to things that don't bring you good vibes, is to distance yourself or cut certain things off. And if you feel like you're constantly repressing emotions, well, that's not really a good thing, because you're fighting against your own nature, which is to be able to share your thoughts, be able to speak, be able to express yourself. And the hardest part is that not everyone's going to accept what you bring to the presence of the world and other people. But I think the last thing that I could leave this video on is that it's more liberating to not feel validated by people constantly. Like, one of the best things you can do for yourself is do things for yourself and not for other people. If it makes you happy, then that's what matters. And yes, it's important to be a person who can make some other people happy as well, but you don't want to be always doing things to make other people happy and never yourself. That's not a good balance, you know? So remember balance, remember your own happiness, and remember that some things just need moderation. And that's the key word for today, moderation. You know, I think it's good to look at the news. I think it's good to be well informed and to be able to hear bad news and know that you don't have to feel good about it because you're not supposed to. It's bad news for a reason, and if it doesn't feel good, you don't always have to express that towards people. Just find a way to, you know, like, navigate through it without necessarily self-destructing. You know, talk to people as best as you're able to, and find something that you can do that helps you get out of that sort of knot, you know. And a few things that can be done is, like I mentioned, was like watching entertainment, sitcoms, rom-coms, action adventure, if that's what you like. I don't necessarily recommend horror sort of genre unless you're really into that, but I would say do what helps you the most and that sort of thing. It's better to associate solving problems with things that are more healthy instead of less healthy. That's all there is to it, and I hope this helps. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.